My first filter was a polarizer filter, and that's all I'm going to say about this one, because right after I purchased it, I stopped using filters because I despised anything that was placed in front of my lens, fearing that it would ruin my images. And then I started working with the GFX line and its infamous shutter speed sync with flashes at 1/125th of a second. And I thought to myself, is there any other way to have a little bit more control on my exposure without touching the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed? And like a fool, I decided after a couple years to find out a little bit more about neutral density filters and filters in general. So this will be a three-part video about filters, the one that I use in my filmmaking and my photography. 3 different tools, or set of tools by 3 different brands. Today we are keeping our eyes on the PMVND II, the Peter McKinnon Variable Neutral Density Filters Edition 2, that you probably have seen everywhere on YouTube already. Like the simple neutral density filters, they reduce the amount of light that reaches your sensor. You can either buy a bunch of them with different strengths or choose to work with the variable ND like this one. I've talked about this type of filter in my What's in My Bag video 2021 edition. I am shocked I haven't considered having these in my bag sooner. The PMVND II that I have blocks from 2 to 5 stops of light, and it is as simple as that. If for whatever reasons you need to set your shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture at a specific setting and you are still overexposed, you will need these filters, the variable ND filter or the proper ND filter, to get the right exposure. In photography and of course in video, they will help you achieve your vision. One common situation is you're working outdoors during the day. You want to shoot wide open at f1.2 and your ISO is already at its lowest setting. So your only option is to raise your shutter speed at crazy levels. Now let's say that you want to use a flash, but you don't want to use the HS or HSS mode because it eats too much power. Now depending on your camera brand, you will be stuck around 1/200th or 1/125th of a second. So what can you do? That's when your VNDs come into play. Do you like playing with slow shutters? No problem. You don't want to raise your aperture to f22 to compensate. Your VND filter will help you balance your exposure even indoors. I played at home with some slow shutter speeds recently to have a bit of blur and movement. A little choreography that could only last 2 to 3 seconds depending on what I was trying to create. And during my various tests, I could only get the image I wanted with the help of this VND. There are 2 versions of the PMVND II, the one that blocks from 2 to 5 stops and the other one that blocks from 6 to 9. Most of the VNDs that I had in my hands that were able to block 2 to 9 stops of light in one filter were awful. Color casts, X pattern, and so on. This one gives a slight green tint to your images. Not the end of the world for your photography, but for video, this can be a tiny little problem. So be careful when you're using it for video. Do your white balance once the filter is on. But on the plus side, this has a clever system that prevents you from leaving fingerprints on the glass, and it also eases the screwing and unscrewing process. I have the 82mm filter that fits my biggest lens, and I use, of course, step-up rings to make it fit on my other lenses. A lot of people will use them for videos, like me. Everybody now creates short videos and films with DSLMs and DSLRs, and these little cameras need a little bit of help under certain circumstances. For example, let's say you want to shoot with a camera that has a native ISO of 800 and you want to shoot like Zack Snyder with your lens wide open. You are shooting at 24 FPS with a shutter angle of 180 or 1/50th of a second. Well, this won't be possible without the help of a VND. I used quite a bit the PMVND Edition II for my short dance film, Will You Be There? If you haven't seen it, please go check it out. I used it mostly for the exteriors, but also for some shots inside. I rarely create images now without a VND in my backpack these days. They help me for my photography and of course for my videos, for my short films. They help me create the image, any images I want. The PMVND II has a mist version. Basically, it's a VND with a mist effect. That layer of glass or filter will raise your contrast and take a bit of the edge off of your digital image, giving it a more organic feel, or maybe giving a TV soap opera effect. Yeah, because sometimes it's a bit too much. The effect is too strong. You have different strength. I've used one in one of my previous videos, and you know what? More on that in a later video. I personally only own the PMVND II that blocks from 2 to 5 stops. I don't have the 6 to 9 because owning both filters, or even all 4 if you count both mist versions, can be a big step to make. Here in France, to get one, you will have to pay 279 euros for one filter. So you do the math. Is it worth that price? For me, I would say maybe yes, because I use it a lot and you get what you pay for. They are well built and it is quality glass. And again, I love the system. But recently I discovered that other manufacturers propose their own solutions, their own set of filters with sometimes neat little designs and concepts at a lower price. But what do we actually get at a lower price? Let's find out in part 2.